So I wanted to start the new year with something a little different. I wanted to go over my top 5 wins in 2025 for stocks that actually outperformed the S&P 500 by quite a bit, which of course is the goal of this channel is to invest in a way that can beat the S&P 500. So I had 5 stocks and more, but these are the top 5 best performing stocks in my portfolio from 2025 and how they did throughout the year. So to start the benchmark here, basically we are going to look at the S&P 500, which is again what we are trying to beat by investing in stocks individually. So if we look at the S&P 500 itself, you can also look up VOO if you want. And you will notice that over the past year, now this is the past 365 days, so this is a little bit off because we're doing this as of January 8th, 2026. So you're adding an extra week or so in there, but it's up 16.95% in the past year. Now, if you look at, say, historical returns on Yahoo Finance, you'll notice that the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, otherwise known as VOO, which again models exactly what the S&P 500 is doing. You'll notice it closed at around $631.72. This is weekly, of course, but that is at the end of 2025. If you look at the opening on January 1st of 2025, it was at $542.02, which means that the S&P 500 actually returned about 16.6% in 2025. Now, of course, 16.6% is a pretty strong return for a year of investing, and that's above what typically the average would be for the S&P 500 on a year-to-year basis over time. Now, just to put this in perspective, Robinhood isn't always as easy as I would like it to be to actually show a custom time range for your portfolio, but over the past year, I'm up 28.35% as of January 8th, and of course, that incorporates a bit of a dip in most stocks to start the year of January. Now, my first stock that I wanted to go over that did really well in 2025 is JP Morgan Chase, which of course is one of the biggest financial institutions in the United States, and their stock has been one of my foundational stocks for my portfolio now for a few years, and again another strong year in 2025. So while tech gets all the attention, of course the AI stocks get all the attention, JP Morgan Chase has just been one of those kind of boring but also just extremely effective stocks over time. As you can see, as you look at the historical returns, if you look on a weekly basis, which means if you look at the adjusted close of 321.97 at the end of 2025, and you look at the opening of $240.92 at the beginning of January 1st of 2025, you're looking at a return of about 36.19% over the year 2025. So for JP Morgan Chase, obviously that's great. What's nice about them is they fit the numbers in terms of fundamentals better, in terms of you get a nice dividend of 1.82%. You have a pretty low PE ratio, things like that. A lot of tech stocks, they are just kind of all over the place. They have super inflated numbers. They have low dividends. Their PE ratios are almost 100 in some cases. But they've just been a boring but effective stock over time that's still beating the S&P 500. If you can find a boring stock that's beating the S&P 500 and helps you diversify away from being too heavy into tech, I think JP Morgan Chase does all of that and does it very well. And as far as when I actually first bought JP Morgan Chase, for mine, it was actually August 27th, 2024. And I've been holding it ever since. So I was able to capitalize on the full year of returns for 2025. The next stock that probably won't surprise a lot of people is NVIDIA. Now, that being said, NVIDIA was actually the 4th highest return stock of 2025 for my portfolio as far as stocks that I held throughout the entire year. And it returned for me 37.13% in 2025. So it closed around $187.54, but it opened January 1st, 2025 around $136. So it's the one that gets all the hype, of course, over the last 5 to 10 years or so. They are the one that kind of sets the tone for AI. But if you look at NVIDIA, there are plenty of stocks that actually outperformed them last year. Now, of course, when it comes to AI, when it comes to chips, when it comes to tech stocks in general, they are still pretty much the top dog, or at least in the top 3 to 5 stocks that you can have. But in my opinion, it's better to not go just all in on tech. And so that's why I have stocks like JP Morgan Chase that have also outperformed the S&P 500. Another thing about Nvidia, though, is I think that they are under a lot of pressure to continue to beat on EPS and revenue. As you can see, they beat by 3.46% and 3.48% respectively for Q3. But if they were ever to miss, I think that could be something that could lead to a lot of people panicking about the market, because AI is seemingly propping up the stock market right now, which is one of the few things in our economy that seems to be going well. Now, while I have bought and sold Nvidia a few times, I bought my initial stock in Nvidia back around July 19th, 2022, and that was what led to me getting significant returns over time. And again, 2025 was just another solid year. Now, another one that did really well for me in 2025 is called Constellation Energy. You may have seen me make a video about this, but this is one of my top energy stocks. And if you wonder why and you missed that video, this is something I think is going to be more and more in demand. It's not just because the power grid, getting more and more users over time, but you also have these huge data centers that require immense amounts of power. Just read up on how much power a single data center requires. Also, you have electric cars that are going to require more and more power as people switch to electric vehicles. And then you also have things like Bitcoin mining and many other things that lead to increased electricity usage. We may even see in the future more desalination plants and things like that. So either way, energy usage is going to keep going up drastically right now. All these major tech companies are spending billions and billions of dollars over these data centers, and that alone is leading to, immense usage of energy. So Constellation Energy is actually one of the top energy stocks. They did really well over the past year, up 32.28%. But if you actually look at their historic numbers here, they closed, if you look at weekly from January 1st to December 31st on Yahoo Finance, they closed around $357.12. And that was the very end of December 31st. January 1st, they started around $226.38, which means they brought in a return of about 57.74% over the course of 2025 from January 1st through December 31st, which is a very good return, beating the S&P 500 again by a significant amount, by over 40% is what they beat the S&P 500 by, actually, because they were at 16.6% over the course of last year. So Constellation made some great deals, some nuclear energy deals with the government, with Microsoft, and they seem to be positioned well in clean energy as well, and one of the top stocks in energy going forward for something we know that is for sure going to be in huge demand. And just to show you when I initially bought Constellation Energy, it was back in October of 2024. Now, my second best performing stock of 2025 was Alphabet Inc. Class A. So, of course, we know this as Google. Google, in my opinion, is going nowhere. They are going to continue to dominate the world as always. So Google, if you look here, they have a PE ratio of 32.55, which is not too crazy for a tech company. They're not really known for their dividend yields, but over the past year, they have been killing it. They're up 67.8%. If you look at how they've done historically, according to Yahoo Finance, and you look at their weekly breakdown here throughout the entire year of 2025, they closed around $313.85 at the end of the year, and they opened at the beginning of the year around $190.65. So a huge return, going from 190 or so to 313, and you're talking about a return of, in my estimate, 64.6% return on investment if you held them through January 1st through December 31st. So a great return. You're beating the S&P 500 by like triple or more. And it's a stock that has so many things to like. You're talking about they own Waymo, which is in the lead by all accounts, basically in self-driving robo-taxis. They're in the lead, it seems, in AI, as OpenAI has a huge amount of users, but they are also losing pretty much billions of dollars a year trying to figure out how to get profitable. And they also just had a new lawsuit with Elon Musk about misleading him about going to a for-profit model. So that's obviously not good either. And then they have just the entire ecosystem of like Google Workspace, Google Analytics, all these different things that businesses need. And then they dominate search with Google search as well as YouTube. And then they, of course, have probably more data on you than just about anyone. So they are well diversified. They're one of the best tech companies for a reason. And even though they actually didn't have amazing returns, in the years prior, they ended up having a monster year in 2025. And just to show you proof, I actually originally bought Alphabet Class A back in March of 2024. Now for the highly anticipated number one on the list, we have Advanced Micro Devices, otherwise known as AMD. A lot of people, if you told them at the beginning of January this would be a amazing stock for 2025, a lot of people would have laughed at you. They were actually called Advanced Money Destroyer on Reddit because people were talking about, well, we thought they would do well. All the indicators make sense for them to do well, and they just can't do anything while their biggest competitor, Nvidia, is going through the roof year after year. Well, they finally had a really good year. They were up about 68% over the past year if you include the first week of January here. But if you look at their historic returns on Yahoo and you look at where they closed at the end of 2025 at around $215.34, they opened around $122.29 at the beginning of 2025. You are talking about a massive return of about 76.1% over the course of 2025 from January 1st to December 31st. So AMD did extremely well. A lot of people see them as like the second fiddle to Nvidia in the chip market. But as long as AI is in demand, as long as these chips are in demand, as long as people still need computers, you are going to see AMD always in the conversation. They seem to be a well-managed company with a good CEO, and I don't think they're going anywhere. They are one of the classic examples of everything makes sense for them. They just haven't gotten the returns yet. That's why you can't judge everything based on historical returns. But if you look at how AMD is doing now, they have been really solid, and their P ratio is pretty high. They don't have much of a dividend, but they are doing pretty well in terms of your returns if you really just held out and gave them a chance over the course of 2025. And to show you proof that I bought AMD before 2025, I actually bought it almost a full year before then, and it was in February of 2024 when I bought my stock in AMD and held it all of this time. So again, if you look at the S&P 500, you've returned about 16.5% or so in the year of 2025, slightly above that if you go just by the past 365 days at the beginning of January 2026 here. But these are some of the stocks that I really believed in. Some of them tech, but a lot of them not as well. We have JP Morgan Chase and Constellation Energy mixed in there as well. Now, of course, this is not financial advice. This is just me showing my own results so that you know that I'm not just making stuff up all the time, not just making up things for video content. I am actually in the trenches trading and making decisions, but mostly I do long-term investing. So that is kind of the lens you have to look at this channel with, is I am trying to do this long-term, lower risk, and still beat the S&P 500. I am not a day trader. I am not trying to be a wheeler dealer type of investor. So if you're interested in that kind of content, subscribe for more. Please like the video if this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.